In 1985, in the town of Riley, Ohio, three brothers would experience the most terrifying Halloween night in the small town's history. They were the Allen brothers, Eddie age 15, Dusty age 14, and their youngest brother, 12-year-old Matthew. On that Halloween morning, the boys' mother sent them off to school in their routine fashion. Lunches packed, hair combed, teeth brushed, a kiss from mother and out the door to walk to school. It was not a long walk, a right, a left, 4 blocks, and they were at the playground heading towards the red doors into the school. Each of the boys then had a typical day of classes, clowning with friends, and excitement as they anticipated tonight's trick-or-treating. So when 3 o'clock bells rang out, they all rushed towards the red doors to meet for the walk home. "Hooray!" Matthew exclaimed, "time to get costumed up." Yeah, Dusty said, laughing and shaking his head, "you with your Lamo ghost sheet." Today the three boys were accompanied by their friend Joey and their neighbor Missy as they walked home. They laughed about and chatted hollow conversation as they strolled down the street towards home. The group soon came upon the tiny cottage on the corner of Maple Street. They stopped just short of the old fence that surrounded the mystical yard around the home. Eddie began to giggle as he pointed at the small man raking leaves. "Look, there's Harvey the midget," he laughed as he spoke to the group. "He's so weird," Joey proclaimed. "Leave him alone," Missy pleaded. "Watch this," Dusty demanded as he ran to the edge of the yard. He then hopped over the fence, ran to where the little man had piled the leaves he'd raked, and kicked them all over the yard again. "Hey, where's the gold asshole?" Dusty yelled as he rushed back over the fence and rejoined the group. Harvey immediately gave chase, running towards the rude boy, but as he tried to climb the fence he fell quite roughly onto the paved sidewalk. The group burst into laughter as they bolted towards home, turning to yell obscene and narrow-minded insults at poor Harvey. When they reached the boys' house, Missy scolded them for their constant harassment towards the little man before parting ways. The Allen brothers just laughed as they led Joey inside for an after-school snack. A short time later, Joey left for home as mother sent the boys upstairs to get ready for trick-or-treat. An hour later the boys stampeded down the stairs in full costume, ready to hit the streets and get some treats. Eddie was dressed as a werewolf, Dusty was a vampire, and Matthew, who was a husky boy, wore a white sheet with 2 eye holes as a ghost. "You all look great," Mother said with a smile. "Gather up for a Polaroid." The boys reluctantly gathered in the kitchen for a quick picture. It was beginning to get dark outside, and they were anxious to get out the door. Joey, who was dressed as a pirate, met them in front of their house, and they took off down the road. They were practically sprinting from house to house, trying to fill their pillowcases as full as possible with candy. They knew that at the school the police and fire department were handing out full-size candy bars, so they wanted to get there as fast as possible. It didn't take long for the guys to get to the school. They stood in the line leading towards the booths where police and firefighters were handing out candy and safety lights. "Are you boys behaving tonight?" Officer Johnson asked them as he dropped their treats into their sack. "Of course we are," Eddie replied. "Well, don't forget to stop by the firehouse for the haunted maze," Officer Johnson suggested. "Awesome, we will definitely check it out." So now the boys made their way down Oak Street to the old fire station to go into the haunted maze. Strobe lights flashed and spooky music played over the screams of frightened children inside. "This looks so cool," Dusty said with excitement. "I don't want to go in, it's too scary looking," Matthew stuttered, shaking. "Don't be a sissy," Dusty teased. Still frightened, but not wanting to be called a coward, Matthew hesitantly followed the others into the building. Inside it was dark and loud, with flashing lights and fog machines filling the air. The boys walked cautiously through the first rooms, being jump-scared by a mummy in the first, then a knife-wielding killer in the second. There were many makeshift rooms, each with multiple doors leading through a labyrinth of townspeople dressed in various scary costumes. They made their way to a dead end, in a room that was empty at first glance. Only fog seemed to fill the room, and the only door out was the door they came in through behind them. Suddenly, the door swung open with a thud. "I've got you now." It was Harvey, holding a hatchet, dressed in a killer leprechaun costume. The boys panicked, running in every direction, but the leprechaun stood between them and the door. "Help!" The boys all screamed, but nobody cared, as in this haunted maze there were screams for help coming from many children. "Come on," Eddie shouted as he charged to the door, pushing the leprechaun aside. The boys all followed, rushing past Harvey as he swung his hatchet. They somehow made it through the door, but Harvey gave chase, recklessly swinging his hatchet. Now they were back in another room of the maze, screaming in terror as others in the building just ignored or laughed at them. They twisted and turned through door after door, pleading for help and crying. In the confusion, the boys became separated, and Eddie turned around to search for his brothers. He quickly rejoined Dusty, who was there with Joey, but young Matthew was nowhere to be found. "Find the exit," Eddie ordered. "I'm going to find Matthew." Dusty and Joey then took off to search for the way out, as brave Eddie backtracked, calling out for his baby brother. Meanwhile, by some luck, Dusty and Joey reached the exit of the maze. They rushed to a policeman who stood at the door, frantically explaining to him what had happened. "It's just pretend." The officer laughed, completely disregarding the boys' pleas for help. Inside, Eddie made his way carefully from room to room. He was very frightened, calling for Matthew. Then, he saw him, huddled in terror in the corner of a hallway. "Matthew!" he called out, scrambling towards his brother. "Where is the leprechaun?" Eddie asked. Matthew just sat there, curled in the fetal position, too frightened to speak. "Never mind, just come on," Eddie yelled, grabbing Matthew's hand, leading him towards the exit. A few panicked lefts and rights, a few doors, and they emerged from the firehouse. They saw Joey and Dusty standing near the police officer, still trying to explain to him that this wasn't part of the fun. "Just forget it," Eddie said. "Let's just get home." They all agreed and started towards the Allen home as fast as they could go. When they reached the house, the boys felt relieved. They all went inside and went to the kitchen where Mother was washing dishes. They frantically told her about what had happened in the haunted maze. Mother, however, didn't know how the boys had bullied the little man, Harvey, and she too told them it was just part of the maze. "Get upstairs and get out of those costumes, then we'll inspect your candy," she ordered. "Joey, you should head home." "He's staying tonight, Mom," Eddie explained. Mother said it would be fine, but that they needed to head upstairs to change. Everyone except Matthew headed towards the stairway. Matthew just stood there, silent, seemingly frightened. He hadn't spoken a word since they were attacked in the maze. "Matthew, move it," Mother told him, pointing towards the steps. He still didn't budge. "I think he's in shock, Mom. It was very scary," Dusty explained. "Okay then, you boys get up there and change. Matthew, you sit down until you are ready to listen. You won't have any candy until you change." So, they went upstairs to change and wash. Matthew sat in a chair, still silent. After they finished getting changed, the others came back down the stairs. They made their way back to the kitchen, only to find Matthew standing alone at the edge of the table. They saw that Mother had dumped their candy bags on the counter to inspect. "Where's Mom?" Eddie asked, his voice trembling as he noticed the red pool flowing from behind Matthew's feet. They all saw it as they glanced to the floor. Mother was laying there, a red pool of blood streaming from her slashed throat. Now Matthew, who stood eerily in front of them holding his pillowcase, dumped it on the table. In the mix of various delicious treats, a human head rolled out of the case. It was Matthew's head. The terrified children screamed as the ghost who stood before them exposed a butcher's knife from behind his back. He then pulled the sheet from off his body to reveal a little man, dressed as a leprechaun. It was Harvey. Before the boys could react, Harvey plunged the knife through Eddie's chest, severing his heart and killing him instantly. He then quickly pulled the knife out and jammed the 10-inch blade into Joey's stomach, laughing hysterically, as he stabbed the boy over and over again. By this time, Dusty had turned to attempt an escape, but he slipped in his fallen brother's warm blood, slamming onto the hard kitchen floor. He looked up, fear filling his eyes as Harvey stared down at him. Or, did the baby fall down? Harvey asked ironically. Happy Halloween, he laughed as he stuck the knife into Dusty's rib cage. He then slowly pushed the blade deeper into his abdomen, all the while laughing. After he finished killing everyone in the Allen home, Harvey gathered all the candy from the counter and walked out the back door. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for more Halloween treats from Fright House Incorporated.